Good day, Kababayan. In our world that continues to strive for equality, it cannot be denied that discrimination and racism still remain a challenge for many people, especially black individuals. In this video, we will discuss 10 countries where black people face unequal treatment, discrimination, and various challenges that show their lack of acceptance. These are the stories of pain, deprivation, and struggle of the black community who continue to seek justice and respect. Join me on this journey so we can better understand their experiences and learn how we can help build a more equal and just world. And before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always updated for our new uploaded videos. Thank you so much, Kabayan. Let's get started. Number 10. Turkey. The discrimination in Turkey against black people. Turkey, although known for its rich history and culture, still faces issues of discrimination against black individuals. In a society focused on ethnocentric identity, they are often considered others or outsiders, resulting in unequal treatment in various aspects of life, such as work, education, and housing. Black migrants and refugees from Africa, in particular, often experience workplace discrimination and xenophobia. Many reports show verbal harassment, microaggressions, and racist remarks in public places, showing the deep roots of discrimination in society. Xenophobia in Turkey often stems from a negative perception of migrants and refugees. Black individuals are often stereotyped and not portrayed fairly in the media, which creates more stigma against them. At border checkpoints and the immigration process, discrimination against black refugees is more overt, making it difficult for them to find a better life in the country. In this system, their integration into society becomes difficult, and discrimination becomes part of their daily experience. Moreover, socioeconomic inequality is a major challenge for the black community in Turkey. They are often pushed into menial jobs without adequate benefits and protections. Lack of access to proper housing causes them to live in crowded and substandard areas. This situation shows the deep roots of discrimination and inequality, which need to be addressed in order to achieve a more inclusive society. Despite these challenges, the black community continues to fight for their rights and dignity despite great odds. Number 9. UAE. Exploitation of migrant workers from Africa. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, known as a modern wealth center, has often faced controversies over its treatment of migrant workers, particularly from Africa. Many African workers come to the UAE with dreams for a better life, but they often end up in exploitative conditions. Under the kafala system, they are strictly tied to their employers, which limits their freedom and opens the door to various forms of abuse, such as overwork, unfair wages, and lack of legal protection. This system gives too much power to employers, causing an unequal relationship between worker and employer. Discrimination based on race, where migrant workers from Africa are often given low-quality jobs and treated less than their co-workers from Europe or Western Asia. The color of their skin often becomes the basis of prejudice, leading to lower wages, disrespect at work, and racial profiling. There are reports of verbal abuse and lack of access to legal protection, further exacerbating their situation. This type of discrimination is not only in the workplace, but is also experienced in everyday life. The plight of African migrant workers in the UAE also exposes deep socioeconomic inequality. Many of them are pushed to the lowest levels of society, with limited access to education, healthcare, and decent housing. The lack of a fair employment system and the existence of mechanisms like kafala widen the gap between the rich and the poor. Despite being a global hub, the UAE remains a country where race and socioeconomic status have a significant impact on quality of life. Because of this, the call for reform and more humane treatment of all workers, regardless of their race or origin, continues. Number 8. Italy. Racism and exclusion. The struggles of black migrants in Italy, as one of the main gateways to Europe, faces a serious issue of discrimination against African migrants and asylum seekers. Many African migrants face severe challenges, from unequal employment, education, and housing opportunities to living in overcrowded refugee camps or substandard housing. Despite their efforts to find a better life, they often remain marginalized, showing a lack of support from society and the government. Apart from systematic discrimination, incidents of racism and hate speech against black individuals are also widespread in Italy. Reports of verbal and physical attacks, especially in public places, are becoming a common experience for many African migrants. Hate speech from social media and even from some political figures with anti-immigration rhetoric further strengthens the negative view against them. Such incidents not only make it difficult for them to adapt to society but also cause severe alienation and insecurity in their daily lives. The impact of this discrimination is profound, causing socioeconomic inequality, mental health challenges, and lack of access to basic services such as healthcare and education. However, many African migrants are still trying to get out despite the challenges. In the midst of this challenge, there is a growing call for measures that promote inclusion, equality, and acceptance of black migrants in this country. Number 7. Australia. Racism and xenophobia. The struggles of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and migrants in Australia has a difficult history of discrimination against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, who are considered the country's original citizens. Many years of colonization and systematic abuse have taken a toll on their culture, health, and livelihood. Indigenous Australians continue to face issues of inequality, such as low levels of education, high levels of poverty, and limited access to health services. Despite the government's steps to promote the rights of Indigenous people, they still experience a lot of discrimination and stereotyping in their daily lives. Apart from discrimination against Indigenous Australians, Australia also experiences xenophobia against migrants from the Middle East and Africa. People from these countries are often greeted with suspicion and fear by some Australians, linked to issues of terrorism and other national security concerns. Migrants from the Middle East and African regions often face hate crimes, racial profiling, and discrimination in the workplace and community. These negative views are exacerbated whenever there are incidents of violence in these countries of origin, reinforcing stereotypes and xenophobic attitudes against migrants. Despite being a multicultural country, Australia continues to be challenged to eliminate attitudes of discrimination against Indigenous peoples and migrants. While the government and organizations are working to address this issue, ongoing cases of racism and hate speech reveal a deep gap in understanding and acceptance. Steps for a more inclusive society still need to be focused on to ensure that all citizens, regardless of their origins, experience equal respect and opportunity. Number 6. Saudi Arabia. Exploitation and discrimination. The plight of migrant workers in Saudi Arabia is one of the main destinations for migrant workers from Africa and Southeast Asia, who usually come there in search of better job opportunities. However, many of these workers experience exploitation and discrimination. Migrant workers, particularly domestic workers, often work under harsh conditions, such as long work hours, low wages, and lack of adequate rest. They cause great physical and emotional suffering for many workers, who are often helpless because of their dependency on employers. One of the main problems is the lack of legal protection for migrant workers under the kafala system, a controversial mechanism in which workers are tied to their employers for their visas and legal status. This makes it difficult for them to report abuse or change jobs without their employer's permission. Such a system causes unfair treatment, where employers often use power to exploit their workers. Some have reported non-payment of wages, physical abuse, and even sexual abuse, but these cases are rarely resolved due to a lack of support and protection. Despite reports and international pressure, change in the situation of migrant workers in Saudi Arabia remains limited. Although the government has taken steps to amend the kafala system, its implementation has not yet been fully felt by the workers. Continued discrimination and exploitation highlight the need for stricter laws and better enforcement to protect the rights of migrant workers, regardless of their origin or status. These reforms are essential to establish fair and humane treatment for all workers in the country. Number 5. France. Discrimination and inequality. The African and Middle Eastern experience in France, although known for the principles of liberté, égalité, fraternité, faces major issues of discrimination against African and Middle Eastern communities. Many members of these groups experience systemic racism and stereotyping in various aspects of their lives. Discrimination is often felt in areas such as education, employment, and housing, where ethnic minorities struggle to achieve equal opportunities. Stigma against their race and religion, especially against Muslims, exacerbates their socioeconomic exclusion. Police profiling is one of the most controversial issues facing African and Middle Eastern communities in France. There are many reports of racial profiling, where police often target ethnic minorities for random checks and interrogations, even without sufficient grounds. This type of treatment creates fear and distrust between these communities and the authorities. According to activists, incidents of police brutality and harassment against members of African and Middle Eastern communities continue to occur, but accountability is rare. Apart from police profiling, the socio-economic exclusion of ethnic minorities remains a major challenge in France. African and Middle Eastern communities often live in disadvantaged suburbs or banlieues, where access to quality education, employment, and social services is limited. Their lack of opportunity leads to high levels of poverty and hopelessness. Despite the government's measures to combat discrimination, many still believe that they are insufficient to end systemic racism and remove obstacles to the integration of ethnic minorities in society. Number 4. Japan. Exclusion and prejudice. Discrimination against foreigners in Japan. Japan is known as a homogeneous country, where Japanese culture and identity are deeply rooted in their society. Because of this, many foreigners, particularly dark-skinned individuals, experience discrimination and isolation. Foreigners usually have difficulty finding jobs, housing, and services because of stereotypes and negative perceptions about them. Discrimination is also often experienced in everyday interactions, such as being rejected in some establishments such as apartments or hot spring resorts. Dark-skinned individuals are often subject to racial prejudice rooted in a lack of understanding between cultures. Skin color can cause them to be treated as someone else, even if they have lived in Japan for a long time or have deep connections to the country. This type of view hinders their integration into society, especially in the fields of education and work, where non-Japanese are often not given equal opportunities. Moreover, society's deep prejudice against the purity of Japanese culture results in the difficulty of non-Japanese to fully become part of the community. This idea places a clear boundary between Japanese people and foreigners, regardless of their length of residence or contribution to the country. Although Japan is gradually becoming aware of these issues, change is slow, and many foreigners remain victims of discrimination and social isolation. Number 3. Russia. Racist violence and xenophobia. The struggles of African migrants in Russia. African migrants in Russia often face severe discrimination and racist violence. Many reports indicate physical assaults, harassment, and hate crimes against black people, who are usually targeted by extremist groups or individuals with deep prejudices against foreigners. Their skin color becomes a clear basis for discrimination, causing fear and alienation from their community. Such incidents are more prevalent in urban areas, where the interaction between migrants and the local population is higher. Xenophobia and hate crimes against African migrants stem from stereotypes rooted in ignorance and fear of foreigners. Many Russians view migrants as a threat to their economy and culture, leading to negative treatment of black people. In some places, incidents of racist violence are said to be part of a wider trend of nationalism and xenophobia, which is being further fueled by extremist groups. Despite laws prohibiting hate crimes, many of the cases remain unsolved due to a lack of action from the authorities. The lack of effective legal protection for African migrants causes injustice and strengthens the impunity of perpetrators of violence. While the Russian government has taken steps to address the issue of racism, many still believe that they are not enough to change the situation of foreigners living in the country. Improving education about diversity and stricter enforcement of anti-discrimination laws are essential to reduce racist violence and provide equal treatment to African migrants in Russia. Number 2. India. Colorism and caste. The struggles of dark-skinned individuals in India. Discrimination against dark-skinned individuals is widespread in India, where skin color is often associated with beauty, success, and social status. Colorism, or the negative perception of darker skin, is deeply rooted in Indian culture and continues to be reinforced by the media and beauty standards. Dark-skinned individuals often experience discrimination in education, employment, and relationships, where those with lighter skin are valued more. This kind of treatment causes low confidence and lack of equal opportunities for many people. Apart from colorism, caste-based discrimination remains one of the biggest problems in India, particularly against the Dalit community, who are traditionally considered untouchables. Dalits, who mostly have darker skin, continue to experience discrimination and violence from the upper castes. Despite laws prohibiting caste-based discrimination, many still report unfair treatment, such as lack of access to education, employment, and social services. Incidents of physical abuse, hate crimes, and social exclusion are still part of the daily lives of many Dalits. The combination of colorism and caste-based discrimination poses even greater challenges for dark-skinned individuals in India, especially those in lower castes. While the government and organizations have taken steps to combat discrimination, change is slow and often tied to deep-rooted traditions and beliefs. Education and raising awareness about equality is essential to end both colorism and caste-based discrimination, and ensure that everyone experiences equal treatment, regardless of their skin color or social status. Number 1. China. Racism and exclusion. The African migrant experience in China. Guangzhou, known as the Chocolate City because of its large population of African migrants, is at the center of a discussion about discrimination against foreigners from Africa in China. Many African migrants head to the city to do business and seek opportunity, but they often experience racist treatment. Incidents such as racial profiling, unfair treatment by landlords, and rejection of establishments are common complaints of African migrants. Reports of over-policing in African communities also cause fear and uncertainty in their lives in Guangzhou. Chinese media sometimes promote racist stereotypes against African migrants, resulting in negative public perception. Africans are often associated with crime, disease, or being illegal immigrants, even though most of them are legally living or working in the country. Such representation in the media reinforces racism and causes the social exclusion of African migrants. In many cases, they are not accepted in social circles and are often subject to discrimination in employment and housing. The lack of clear protection for the rights of African migrants worsens their situation. Although China is gradually becoming multicultural due to globalization, African migrants continue to struggle with integration. The discrimination and exclusion they experience in Guangzhou reflects the broader issue of racial prejudice in China. To reduce such problems, public education and more inclusive policies for foreigners, which will promote respect and equality in society, are essential. At the end of our discussion about 10 countries where black people are not welcome, it is important to remember that discrimination and racism are issues that exist not only in the aforementioned countries but in many parts of the world. These experiences illustrate the need for deeper understanding, acceptance, and action to promote equality and respect for all people, regardless of their race or skin color. Ultimately, every society has a responsibility to eliminate prejudices and build a more inclusive world for all. And if you like our video, just comment in the comment section what we talk about next, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also click the notification bell so that you always be updated in our newly uploaded video.